Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to Season 3 of The Agile World, where we discuss customer and employee experience, organizational and workforce transformation, and how business can adapt and continually improve in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed in this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles, or get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today we're going to talk about building a customer-centric organization and how to balance profits, technology, and culture while doing so. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Ilenia Vidili, Customer Experience Advisor and author of the book, Journey to Centricity. Ilenia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Greg. That's a nice presentation. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to talking here. So let's get started by talking about your book, Journey to Centricity. Why did you choose to write a book about customer-centric companies? Why do you think that's important?
So writing a book has been on my list for a very long time. And to give you a short answer, I really believe that if business leaders put the people, so customers and employees, at the center of their organization, we would have better companies and therefore a better business world. So a lot of my clients and potential clients have been asking me, where do we start from? How can you do this? So I thought of putting together three main pillars: the humanity pillar, technology pillar, and culture pillar, which I believe are the three main elements for building a successful customer-centric organization.
Great.
My vision of customer centricity is that companies should live and breathe their customers and find really innovative and sustainable ways to make a difference in their lives, but also in society and in the world. So with this book, I really want to touch upon a lot of social economic issues that the world is experiencing today and how these are shaping new people, consumer behavior in the very fabric of society. So I really want to focus the book on the new generation of consumers, which are the ones that are revolutionizing consumer behavior as a whole. And I really wanted to help the reader with three important points. How can companies leave the old process and thinking behind? Second, how can they leverage the single most important assets they have, so they are customers? And lastly, what can be a formula, or I also call them the guiding principles in their battle to become customer-centric, which is not an easy battle.
There's been a big shift. I come from the marketing world, and that shift from really being that broadcasting marketing messages to really being customer centric. I think it's been a long time coming, but it's exciting to hear people like yourself talking more and more about this and giving practical advice. I think everyone kind of agrees that they agree on the premise, right, that it's important, but I like that you're giving ways and methods to actually implement that. And I think, a big part of that does come down to leadership, right? Leadership leading the way. How would you describe leadership's role in building a customer-centric culture?
So it's a question that I often get asked, and is also a chapter of my book. I'm going to place this in the culture pillar because I believe it's a very important part of the culture of an organization. So Greg, most leaders think they are customer focused and they're focused on their customers, but they really aren't.
Right.
So I challenge you to find a CEO that doesn't say so. So first, a leader of the company, they really need to demonstrate a genuine commitment to customer focus. So, and real change comes from the top. So the percentage of the people, of the leadership of a company that is really actually focused on customer centricity is really, really low. But if we want to change a culture, if we want to change a company and become more customer centric, then leadership really need to believe in it, have a clear vision, identify key people who can push the project forward. And I believe that if the top doesn't really understand the importance of being customer centric in this hyper competitive landscape, this will never happen. Because, of course, you don't really walk in a company one day and say, okay, today we're going to change the culture of this company, and we're going to be more customer centric. So it really needs to come from the leaders that need to push the project, that really need to envision the commitment. And customer centricity is your approach with your customers, right? Is not something that happens overnight by pressing a button. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So every decision that is taken, every business decision that is taken must be done to serve customers better. For example, I was talking to a business leader for my book last month, and he said that every time there is a new decision to be taken, whether it is a logistic decision or whether it is a finance decision, the board sits down all together and they actually ask the question: does this help my customers and my employee? If yes, then okay, they go ahead with it. If they doesn't, then it's not. Um, it's not. It doesn't deserve to be a decision to be taken. So another thing that I want to express the concept a little bit more thoroughly is as I've been researching and talking to psychologists about empathy. An interesting thing that I found is that empathy is contagious, right? And most people who observe empathy feel more empathic themselves in a particular moment. We always talk about be a more empathic business and how to spread empathy with customers, right? But
Yeah.
it comes really from the leadership. Because if we don't feel as employees, just if, for example, in contact centers, if you don't feel your boss, your manager, or the leadership top, be more empathic with you, for example, then you won't be able to be more empathic with the customers. So it's like a chain. It's like children, basically, when they observe their parents being more empathic, do good for society, then they automatically learn from their parents, and it's exactly the same thing. So
Yeah.
it really comes from the leadership. So customer-centric leaders are the ones that provide the direction, the purpose to the employees, who then pass it to the customers.
Yeah, no, I like the way you put that. What about technology's role in all of this? I mean, it's technology, tools, software, all of that not only affects the customer directly, but it's often how employees are interacting and things like that. What's the how do you balance technology with this need for customer centricity?
So, as I said earlier, in the second pillar of my book, we'll talk about technology, and the first one talk about humanity. So, the humanity of a business. More precisely, I'll talk about purpose, human connection, trust, empathy. So, Greg, we went from companies being completely skeptical about digital, it's not been it completely, to now to wanting to have the latest piece of tech at the cost of losing focus on customers and employees. And these really add stress on us, customers and employees, and lose empathy and therefore customer engagement and eventually consumer trust. So I'm not really against tech and digital at all. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I just think that in a world of a lot of changes and challenges, we really need businesses that care less about the brightest piece of their product or the brightest piece of software, but they care more about the people inside and outside the organization. And I'm going to make you a couple of examples here.
Yeah.
So, technology in most ways has a really positive effect on business operations. And, for example, especially in the automation of admin processes, such as communication with customers, right? The problem is that most companies believe that these digital tools can improve customer engagement like a miracle. So they plug in a few engagement softwares to automate customer interactions, and they think that the job is done, but it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
So the reality is that these technologies are greatly designed to replicate some sort of friendliness, but are simply not able to offer the much needed level of human connection that we need today, that customers need today. So, yes, tech can help greatly, but we have to compensate and balance it out with other customer focused initiatives. In other words, for
Yeah.
example, the customer center, the contact centers are the customer touch points that is not the most automated, but companies want to automate it as much as possible, right? By using chatbots, for example, or by automating what employees have to say over the phone with scripts and things like that. But the thing is, the automating contact centers and other customer interactions is the worst customer touch point to automate, because contact center is the most important touch point that spreads empathy and increases customer trust. Is the only touch point where customers feel listened to, understood, feel valued. And one example that I wanted to make is during the pandemic, an insurance company wasn't really getting many customer service calls for obvious reasons, because customers weren't really traveling from point A to point B, and everything
Yeah.
was closed. So the leaders decided to proactively call the customers and actually ask them how the customers were doing, right? So you see the shift in thinking and mindset here. The
Yeah.
important point here wasn't really to wait for calls to come in, but to actually check in on customers and make sure that customers were okay, or just exchanging a few words to say, hey, we are here if you need us. And that really generates a high level of trust and empathy.
Yeah.
So the point here is to it's to balance it out, to try to balance out the interaction between the automation and the actual human connection that we need. Everything is automated today. Everything is hyper digital, and some companies really, you don't have any way to talk to a physical touch point, because, or an actual person, because everything is hyper automated. And so you talk to so you get to talk to chatbots, for example, and they don't really understand what you need or what you're talking about. So there is
Right.
this disconnection, you see. And that's why I believe that, yes, technology is really important, but we still need people to balance out the soft skills that are highly needed.
Yeah. Let's get back to another point that you were talking about as well, and which I totally agree with, which is what company out there would say that they don't love their customers and treat them as high priority, but when it really comes down to it, do they really let's to use the expression, do they put their money where their mouth is?
Hmm.
And so which I think is actually part of the problem. What I hear a lot, and I'd be definitely curious what your thoughts are there as well, is these are often talking points, and these are often things that well intentioned, but when it comes down to spending dollars or
Hmm.
saving dollars on one thing over the other, it just seems like some of this customer centric and customer experience in general stuff, even employee experience stuff, tends to be deprioritized for other like short term goals. So what's your how do you counsel companies to? It's almost a way of long
Yeah.
term thinking, but how do you counsel companies to like keep their eye on the on the goal?
That's a big question, Craig.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always, I often get it. I often get this question asked. So, just to be clear, every organization is out there to make money. That's a fact,
Right.
and
Right.
that's absolutely okay, right? We shouldn't judge companies. Oh, you're there to make money. Well, we need to survive. We need to make money.
Right.
But the difference is, between those companies that are out there to serve a big purpose, to serve their customers and society, whilst also making profit. And those companies that want to sell as many products and services as possible to make as much profit as possible at the expense of their people and of society. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So I believe that profit should be seen as an outcome of centricity initiatives rather than the sole objective of a company. And so, Craig, here we're talking about basically shareholder primacy versus
Right.
creating stakeholder value, right?
Yeah.
And over the last 6 months, I've been interviewing a lot of companies that I believe are customer centric and that are going to be best practice examples for my book and for many in my book for many for the world, for many companies out there. So again, here we're talking about mindset, we're talking about culture, approach, and leadership. If you work in a company that lives and breathe the sole purpose of making money, that's what you're going to work towards, right?
Yeah.
Being customer centric, it doesn't mean that a company doesn't make money, but it means that it's adopting a different approach to make money.
Right.
So I
That
believe
makes
that
sense.
today the things that are changing, and if you things are changing, and if your customers sniff and feel that you are in the market with the sole purpose of selling to them rather than serving them, they are quickly going to run away from the capitalist view of your company and go to another company which believes and values much with theirs.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, how about measuring growth towards, so there's every company has different metrics, and there's obviously there's a lot of different factors that go into play as far as measuring customer experience and stuff like that. But how do you I think measuring progress towards this goal, right? Because I mean,
Mhm.
I from my perspective, customer centricity, it's a it's a goal that you achieve over time. It's not a, okay, now we're now we're
Absolutely.
done, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think about measuring progress towards that goal? Like what are some of the ways that you counsel companies to think in doing that?
So I think you mean in terms of metrics, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. Well, I'm not a big fan of metrics. I mean, there are some metrics that work better than others, of course. I think the most important thing that you can do as a company to measure the success is when you really see that all employees are feeling more motivated to do their job, are feeling more motivated to help customers and to work towards the same purpose. So whether you measure the success with an NPS, with a customer satisfaction score, or etc., I think the most important thing that you can do is to share the results, the actual results, and the happiness of your customers with every employee, so that every employee understands where they're actually helping the customer,
Yeah.
right? In other words, for example, the logistic people, a lot of companies and organizations don't really understand where they are helping their customers. And our job as customer experience professionals and the leaders of the companies, they really need to be able to say, hey, you work in delivering the parcel to the customer. Excellent. This is how you're helping the customer in making them feel more valued. So these are the ways, for example. And other ways, like in customer service, for example, or the ways that we can help customers or employees feel more valued, or having a bigger purpose. For example,
Yeah.
we have seen a lot of companies like Ben and Jerry's. They have been an activist brand in pursuing their purpose, but also sharing their voice. And they've been having a lot of support from customers. And that doesn't really strengthen only the relationship with customers, but it strengthens the relationship with employees, because employees are pushing the project forward, and that working towards a stronger purpose, you see. So I think what you really can measure is the satisfaction that your employees feel and see every day. It's how motivated they are to working towards helping their customers.
Yeah.
So that's my advice. There are many different metrics, and of course, metrics are important. But I think that the only KPI that is important is to see the motivation on employees.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. One last question before we wrap up here. As a fellow author, I always like to ask about the process of writing books and stuff. So, can you talk a little bit about that process? You mentioned you've been doing some interviews and things like that, but would love to just kind of hear about your process and any takeaways, anything you learned through the process of actually writing the book.
Oh, sure. So as you probably know, it's a crazy amount of work.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. In this book, there are 20 interviewees between senior executive of companies that I believe are contributing positively to their customers and beyond. University professors and professionals in the field of customer experience and beyond. As we have seen, customer centricity is not just about answering the phone or removing frictions from the customer journey, but it's a lot about leadership, the culture, the purpose, and etc. So I've also interviewed thought leaders in this field. So the first step was to actually map out the framework, so the structure of the book, right? As I said, the book is divided into three pillars, and every pillar has their elements. So these pillars and their elements, they constitute a framework or guiding principles, right, that companies should follow. So that's the first step. So to actually think thoroughly about the structure of the framework and of the book. The second step was to discover the companies and the professionals that I wanted to be as protagonists of my book. And this was a huge amount of work for many reasons. Number one, because looking for these people wasn't an easy task. And, actually getting hold of them and
Yeah.
getting responses, right? Getting them interested in what I'm doing. So I had to contact about 150 potential interviewees to be able to sign a publicity release with 20 of them. So as you know, is quite a
Yeah. Wow.
big
Yeah.
one, big
That's a
work.
lot of
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
And then the second struggle was because when there are companies involved, there are many departments involved, and I interviewed C-suite executives, so it gets really complicated in terms of times, contract sign, and then people involved. So the people involved were not just the C-suite executive, but also the PR people, for example, and then the legal people. So there were a lot of people involved. So getting them all at the same time, for example, and to go agree, it was a little bit challenging. So then the third step was to obviously start the manuscript, which took me about 4 months, and I'm now finalizing it. So that's a lot of
Yeah.
work,
Well, that's exciting. Yeah.
huge amount of research, reading books and reports and all the interviews, tons of hundreds of hours of interviews with people. And the fourth step is the approval bit. So all the people that I've interviewed so far, they have the chance to review the content and the mentions in a respective chapter. So that's
Yeah.
another layer of work, right?
Yeah.
So and then we've come to the fifth step, which is the editing bit, and this involves three types of editing. And as you know, and then there's the final step, which is the design of the cover and the layout of the text. And then lastly is the launch. So I'll be launching in September. As with every product and service, a book needs a proper launch, so proper marketing activities and all the communication, PR and communication, and a lot of initiatives, a lot of interactions with the outside world to let them know that this book is getting launched. So as you can see, it's not an easy thing, and that you
Right.
can do in 2 months, as many people think. But I mean, it needs thorough thinking, and it's an actual project. It's a nearly 12 months project. So it's a
Yeah,
lot of work.
yeah, it's definitely yeah, no, that's it's definitely I think you said it well. It's a lot of people I think that get haven't done it for the first time, they think it's going to be relatively straightforward. But I mean, just
Yeah.
given all the things that you mentioned, all of those are critical pieces of it. And, if you shortchange one, then, you're not going to have as successful an end product. So no, well, good, best of luck with as you
Thank
finish
you.
things up. I know there's still you've done a lot of work. It sounds like, but there's still a lot of work yet to be
Yeah.
done. So I wish you the best with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, and Ilenia, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. People can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name, Ilenia Vidili, or I have my personal website, which is ileniavidili.com. And obviously, my book is coming out in September. So I'll be announcing in a couple of months' time once we have the last pieces tied up. And yeah, finally, we'll be
Yeah,
done.
that's great. Well, thanks again. I'd like to thank Ilenia Vidili for
Thank you,
joining the
Greg.
show. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for listening to the Agile World with Greg Kilstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Kilstrom. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, from my website at theagile.world.